in to see how was your Valentine's Day? How did it go? Did you get the love that you feel you deserve? Were you treated well, or are you well annoyed, well disappointed, and feeling undervalued? Let your girl Key know, because let's be frank about it. When we love, we make ourselves incredibly vulnerable. Love comes with risk, and if we don't want to risk, well, one must question our capacity to make ourselves vulnerable. When we love, we make ourselves vulnerable. Nothing wrong with that. It's a part of how it goes. But often, whether you acknowledge Valentine's Day or not, for many of us, it can be an interesting time where we notice if we feel acknowledged. Did you get the acknowledgement you desired? Or do you feel that you were ignored and you're feeling annoyed and resentful today, or baffled? Or maybe you even struggled to sleep last night. You kept checking your phone, looking at the mailbox, waiting to see if something arrived. You see, when we love, we make ourselves vulnerable. And developing our consciousness about who we allow close to us is incredibly important for our greatness. Am I lying? Am I lying? Please let me know. How was your Valentine's? Did you feel acknowledged? And remember, sometimes we may not be acknowledged, but it can be an interesting time, maybe, for us to acknowledge somebody else. And that might not necessarily be a loved one. Sometimes we might need to acknowledge family members or friends who care and love us. It can be an opportunity for us to share how much we consider someone. So let me ask again, how was your Valentine's? What did you get? Did you not get? Or are you in a relationship where we don't acknowledge them things? And so you've ended up kind of like lowering your bar and just being like, okay, well, that's fine. How did it treat you? What did you notice? What was your expectation? Because often, especially in our intimate relationships, expectations can be the mother of all disappointments. And if you are feeling angry and annoyed, my encouragement to you is check your expectations, my people. What was your expectation? What did you hope that would come yesterday? What acknowledgement were you hoping for? And what disappointment are you experiencing today? Any questions you have, feel free to let your girl Key know, because you're not alone. And often, if you feel that you give and it doesn't come back in return, and that you go above and beyond for others, and you can't understand why your relationships seem to be one way, one-sided, then there's usually a very good reason for that. And if you're curious about what that might be about, that's all good. That's very good. Because curiosity is a perfect way for us to begin to question our situation, to question our behavior. Because what often happens is many people get stuck questioning them. Why do they do this? Why do they treat me like that? Well, there may well be a very good reason for that. And the skill is beginning to inquire within. I'm a massive fan of asking self-inquiring questions. One of the issues that often shows up in the therapy room is we start to get really curious about them. Why do they do this to me? Why do they treat me like that? As I said last week, what we're doing is asking other inquiring questions. And as you probably know by now, people will not always answer them. So the real skill is beginning to flip back the mirror and to look at the man in the mirror. How was your Valentine's Day? Are you in a relationship, or is it a, what do they call it? Situationship, where there is no commitment. You see each other when you can. And so birthdays aren't acknowledged. Christmas isn't acknowledged. And fundamentally, you know, significant life events, you may not be acknowledged. Where does that leave you? Is that something you're comfortable with? Or actually, do you experience some sadness because actually what you would really love is to integrate your life with somebody, to experience deep and meaningful, wholesome love? Because often, and I see this a lot with the ladies, and I'm not saying men don't do this, but what I've noticed is women, we're not very good at being clear about what our hopes are, our aspirations are for the relationship. And so when we're not clear about what our hopes and aspirations are for a relationship, you end up getting what you get. And then you kind of have to work backwards. Yeah, you then have to be like, well, actually, this isn't really what I want for myself, right? So what does it mean? Do you bring actually, because let's be frank, you know, we're getting up in age, right? And if you don't want to be a friend in a friends with benefits situation, are you being clear about actually what I'm seeking is X, Y, Z? Many women I work with, and I can think I can own that for myself. I never used to be very clear. We don't set out our T's and C's. And when you don't set out the T's and C's in relationships, guess what happens, people? You get what you're given. If you have any questions around that, please ask away, because I love interaction. It would be an honor and a privilege to interact with you, to answer those questions. What are your terms and conditions? Are you seeking a relationship where you can bloom, blossom, and grow together? Or are you actually someone who's just happy to have casual relationships? Be clear with yourself about what it is that you are seeking. Because the truth of it is, when we love, we make ourselves vulnerable. And days like Valentine's Day are interesting milestones. You may not be someone who gets down with all of that Valentine stuff. It's commercial. Yeah, we all get it. However, there may well be a part of you that would have liked to have been acknowledged. Doesn't have to have been typical flowers. We know the prices of flowers jumped 100% yesterday. Yeah, but it might have been some gesture, some token that you matter or that you were considered. What would have been your expectation? These are important things for us to muse upon, especially if you find yourself feeling frustrated and annoyed and disappointed. For some of us out there, especially if you're watching on the #/replay, you may have had a very troublesome night. You may not have slept so well. You may have been like, wow, nothing, no acknowledgement. That hurts. And it's okay that it hurts, because the reality is, the question, the self-inquiring question is, what was my expectation? And some of us, our expectations are not grounded in reality. We do have expectations. You may not have brought terms and conditions like, actually, this is what I'm seeking, and are we on the same page? Now, remember, we can bring our terms and conditions to a relationship. We can be clear with somebody about what we are seeking, but absolutely we must pay attention to their behavior. Because if you're not on the same page, then, Houston, we will have a problem. So how was your Valentine's Day? Do you feel valued? Do you feel appreciated? And while you may not be, hey D, how are you, my friend? I saw you were getting love yesterday. Look at all those, I think it was flowers and chocolates I saw you with. You are a very lovable man. You're a beautiful soul. And I hope you're getting the love you deserve, you know, because them soft-hearted guys, you know, them, oh, I love a guy who's loving, a very loving soul. I hope you are in something that is nurturing and kind to you, because you have a wonderful, kind, caring heart and a lot of love to give. Will you acknowledge, my brother, are you getting the love you deserve? And actually, do you give the love? Because sometimes we can have a kind of expectation that we get it back, and it doesn't happen. You're a good soul, man. You're a good soul, you know. And those kind of loving hearts, as you know what, having a very loving, sensitive nature for a guy is not always easy. It's not always easy for the guys, you know. And learning how to protect yourselves is incredibly important. But you are a very incredibly loving soul. Don't you sometimes find when you love a lot, you hurt a lot? When you love a lot, you can hurt so much. And at times when we've loved and we've made ourselves vulnerable and we've been used or abused, you know, it can be devastating. And if we're not careful, what can then happen is we try not to love again. You know, our walls go up. But you need to know that when those walls goes up, whatever that person did to us, it remains in our present. And I don't know about you, but I don't want someone who hurt me in 1985 to have power over me in 2024, if you know what I'm talking about. I don't want someone who hurt me in 2025 to have power over me in 2024. And whilst I'm not a fan of loving and hurting, it is a journey. The key question is, what is this relationship revealing to me about myself? Every single relationship we have is an opportunity for self-insight. I tell my clients this all the time. A relationship is an opportunity for self-insight. What do you begin to notice about you in this relationships? What part of you gets evoked in that relationship? We must pay attention, because if you've got any questions on the YouTube, let me know, right? What we need to pay attention to is the self I am in this relationship. Is this the self that I want to be? If someone makes you feel anxious, if you feel undervalued, and when you feel anxious, it results in you going above and beyond to demonstrate your value and worth to someone, we must ask ourselves, is this the type of relationship I want to be in? Constantly having to prove yourself and going above and beyond can be incredibly exhausting. It's not nice. So we must pay attention to what gets evoked. What gets evoked? Remember, relationships are a window into yourself. They reveal about you. Because I meet many people, we've done the self-help reading, we watched the YouTube videos, we've read the books. And so we think that we're in a better place, and we may well be. But to my mind, the only way that you truly know if you've grown is when you get into a relationship. Okay, no, that could never happen to me again. Really? But you're not in a relationship. So how would you know? I can only identify my growth when I get into relationship, because that's where I'll see what I'm prepared to tolerate and what I'm prepared to advocate for myself. Will I tolerate things I've tolerated in the past, or will I be able to demonstrate self-kindness, self-worth, and self-compassion? Will I be able to let go when actually what I see is not working for me? So how was your Valentines? Was it kind to you? Did you feel acknowledged? Do you feel that the person was considerate of you? Now, that doesn't have to always necessarily be some big gesture. Doesn't always have to be that way. But there may be a part of you that may have wished you were acknowledged even in a small way, to know that you are of value and you are of worth. And that's okay, whether you acknowledge Valentine's or not. Because remember, when we are not conscious about who we let close to us, you see, fundamentally, my people, you have to know that you are somebody of worth. But one of the challenges for many of us is that we struggle with worthlessness. This person wants to be in my life. Every time I've invited someone in my life, it's just mayhem, but let's give it a go. If you have a question, feel free. We're going to go. We'll see what happens. You know? We must be conscious that when we let someone close to us, we are giving them access to us. And if we struggle to know our value, if we struggle to know our worth, then that will show up acutely in our relationships. If you know what I'm talking about, give me a heart, give me a like, let me know I'm not alone out there. Our issues with our self-worth shows up most acutely in our relationships. And if in your history you've had challenges with worthlessness, if we weren't valued and appreciated in our younger years, then only natural that that will show up in our intimate relationships. And that can be deeply unconscious. But if you've struggled to understand why you have a high tolerance for nonsense, why you keep forgiving, keep saying yes when you truly want to say no, then the roots may well lay in our past. And so our worthlessness is often a factor, an unconscious factor, when we may tolerate what is not healthy for us. And at the same token, and I think I miss often talking about this, and people think I'm just purely like dealing with the difficulties. Any questions you have, please ask. So we must remember to love is a beautiful thing. Remember the moments when you've been deeply in love with someone, when they've been very special to you and it's going wonderful. Love is a beautiful thing. And so it's understandable that we seek out intimate relationships, because when they work, it can be beautiful. And let's be frank, you may well know people who are in healthy, wholesome relationships. So it's understandable that we aspire for a relationship. However, if our worthlessness hasn't been addressed, then this can sometimes show up in the types of relationships that we end up having. And if your Valentine's was lackluster, if you felt unacknowledged, then one of the challenges to you is, did you show love? Was there somebody that you needed to express love to? Because sometimes we want these things from others, but the question is, do you give love? In what ways do you show the people around you that you appreciate them and you value them? Who did you send something to? Or did you not? The great spiritual teachers often talk about be what you most desire. So if I seek love, can I be love? So if I seek love, I want to be loved. Can you be loved? Empress Wagwan, sister. The novel survivor. Novel. Hey, how are you doing, my sister? How are you doing? Good to see you. Any questions out there? Now, I know some of us, it's a pagan system, it's a pagan ceremony, and you're not interested in Valentine's. But the reality is, for some of us, we may well have liked to have been acknowledged. And no acknowledgement may well have been tricky for you. And that's understandable, because if we love a lot, we give a lot. And so hopefully, naturally, you may hope for something in return. And that's absolutely okay. But we must be careful and conscious about who we love, because when we love, we make ourselves vulnerable. And if we lack self-worth, if we don't know our worth, then often our relationships are a mirror of that. So before you go complaining about Bob, Jane, and Jill and how they treat you and they're this and they're that, have you actually pondered upon asking self-inquiring questions, which is why do I stay in it? Because if you think you can complain to me about Jim, Jane, and Bob and how they treat you, you've missed the point. The bigger point is, why do you tolerate it? What is that about for you? Often there are unconscious dynamics at interplay. And we need to check that, because naturally we want to be in healthy, wholesome relationships. Don't you want to be? I know I do. It's only natural you want to be in a healthy, wholesome relationship. Nothing wrong with that. That's all good. But if we haven't checked ourselves, done work on ourselves, then the quality, the caliber of the relationships that we have will manifest in its life and is actually a beautiful window into yourself. And whilst I've realized for many people, self-inquiry is very uncomfortable because we'd rather complain about what others do to us and how they treat us, we miss the major point. Some of us have a particular type that we go to. Question to self, note to self. Is your type helpful to you? Man in the mirror stuff. Is your type helpful to you? If you have a particular type that you perpetually go for, the issue is not them. You need to look at yourself and begin to question, is my type helpful for me? Because remember, if you have a certain type of individual that you go for, it often means that you're going to reject the people who are not your types. And actually, sometimes it's the ones who ain't your type that may actually be able to service you in a very different way. Just points to ponder upon. How was your Valentine's? Was it helpful, unhelpful? Did you feel acknowledged? Do you feel that the relationship that you are in is working for you, or is it working against you? And let's be frank, if you're in a long-term relationship, but that's a whole different kettle of fish. Long-term relationships. How do we keep the love alive? Depends. One of the questions I'm always curious about is, what do you do together? Do you do anything together? You don't have to have the same hobbies and the same interests. No, not at all. Obviously, you may know this. If you're seeking love, there is much value in ensuring, checking out whether you and your partner have similar values, because when we don't have similar values, we're highly likely to have values clashes. But fundamentally, what do you actually do together? Do you have fun together? Do you make time for each other? Because let's be frank, if you're not careful, you can just get caught up in the everyday drudgery of surviving, and everything just gets very practical, very logical. And it's no wonder that over time, the love may begin to dwindle, part of life. However, question is, what might you do together? You know, date night can be helpful, has its place, but actually, what about other activities beyond just having a meal together? Because even that can start to feel mundane at times. Dancing classes, wonderful. What might you do together that gets you out of your comfort zone? How was your Valentine's Day? And for some of us, we may not be in intimate relationships at all, but how might you practice self-love, love for self, love where actually it would have been nice for me to go out for dinner tonight. Maybe there's some value in you taking responsibility for that, and maybe I need to take myself out for dinner. Maybe I need to take responsibility for the things that I desire. It's your girl, Keeley Taverner, and this is just a quick live. Getting curious about how was Valentine's today. Did it break your heart, or did it flourish the love that you have and you feel appreciated, valued, and that you are of worth? If you have any questions, feel free to let me know. It's your girl, Keeley Taverner, psychotherapist who's passionate about helping my people pleasers navigate one way, give you all, get back sawdust in return relationships. That's the fundamentals of the people that I support, passionate about supporting people that give their all and get back nout, zero stress in return. If that keeps happening to you, there's a damn good reason for it, and you need to understand what that is if you are seeking love again, because going on the app and then searching, swiping left, right, meeting Bob, Dick, Paul, Jane and Jerry may well not be in your best interest. Some of us have to come off of these dating things and begin to do the inner work, which many of us avoid, and I understand it. But remember, what is in the dark will come into the light in unconscious ways, and when it comes through in unconscious ways, it can have a detrimental impact on you because you will lack control. Our shadow is always in our present, and the more you can bring the shadow into your consciousness, that is a beautiful place for manifestation and breaking toxic cycles and life change. I witness it I've manifested it myself, and I keep continuing on the journey, and I'm a companion to many. Do take care of you, my people, because if you don't, remember, no one is coming to save us. We must learn to save our precious self. However, if you believe you have no value and are of no worth, then the sad reality is your relationships will be a manifestation of your lack of regard for yourself. So stop blaming other people for mistreating you. Become increasingly curious about what is it about me that means I accept this. People cannot do to you what you do not allow. Ask self-inquiring questions. Many of us get stuck asking questions about them. Not great for your greatness. We want to start to turn within, because that is where the answers lie. But as my group said tonight on Navigate Narcissism Now, people don't want to do the inner work. So what happens? You start to cuss and curse about what they did to you. Question is, did you do it to yourself? Unconsciously, of course. You didn't know, because we don't know. Remember, our worthlessness hides in our shadows. It's deeply buried. It's aspects of self we don't want to look at, especially if you've had tricky childhoods. And I get it. I understand it. Any questions you have, feel free to ask. However, when we don't do the inner work, it will blight your life, I believe. It's one of the reasons we play small, and that may show up in all aspects of our life, not only our relationships. It will show up in your finances, in your career. It will show up in what you say yes to, and all the magnificent ways that you say no to yourself and you keep yourself small. There are gifts within you that want to manifest themselves. And for many of us, we spend a lot of time and a lot of energy investing in give your all, one way, get back crumbs in return relationships. And it ain't great for your greatness. If you have any questions, feel free to let your girl Key know. I am here to be of service. Do take care of you, because if you don't, no one is coming to save you. You better learn to save your precious self. Peace. And that's the truth. If we don't learn to save ourselves, no one is coming to save us. Take care. Good night.